Garrett's G25-660 internally wastegated compared to the BorgWarner offering. You guys asked for it, here it is. Today, you're going to learn something. Hey guys, welcome back. Another YouTube video for you. David Drescher, one of our subscribers, asked me to do a comparison between the G25-660 and the S200SXE. I've decided to do that comparison for you, David, but I'm going to go one up as well. I've also brought out the EFR 7163 and the EFR 7670 to do a side-by-side comparison, feature comparison, and we'll go into the compressor maps as well. So let's get these boxes open, let's get them unpacked, and let me show you basically side-by-side physical dimensions, specifications, wheel sizes, horsepower output, and then we'll go into the compressor maps. Enjoy. So we'll start off with the S200SXE. It's 650 horse capable, 57 inducer, 76 exducer on the compressor side. We've got the 7163, which is 57 inducer and 71 exducer on the compressor. G25-660, which is 54 inducer and 67 exducer on the compressor. And the 7670, which is 57 once again inducer and 76 on the exducer on the compressor. Let's compare the physical size, the physical dimensions of these two turbochargers. You've got the G25-660 and you've got the S200SXE. Height-wise, they're more or less the same. They're as close as damn it. Yes, the G25 is internally gated, so the housing is a little bit longer than what the free-floating turbine housing, non-wastegated turbine housing is, but they're more or less the same size in terms of height. Let's talk about the housings real quick. This is an AR72 turbine housing. It operates in the T25 or GT28 family volute, not a T3. This is an AR83 twin scroll. If you look at the dimensions and the actual size, this housing's loose on the core assembly over here. If you have a look at the size of this volute, you'd actually assume that this is a really large housing. It must be T4 because of the T4 flange over here. It's not. Have a look at the inlet holes, they're really, really small. The physical dimensions on the outside of the housing, because of the wall thickness and the sheer weight of the housing, remember it's burst containment tested, and it will obviously contain a burst in the event that you have a burst in the specific housing. It operates in the T3 family. So have a look at the inlet ports on the volute, the entry points into the volute. You'll actually notice that they're a lot smaller than what the housing volute appears to be. With the Garrett, you can actually see that obviously it's made from stainless, so it's a stronger material. You can get away with a thinner wall. If you have a look at the volute on the inside over there, you'll be able to see that it still operates. The actual shape of the volute internally is really, really small, and it will basically represent the GT25 or the T25, T28, GT28 family AR volute size. Now, I'm going to put these turbochargers down so that you guys can see them next to each other. Now, the Garrett is obviously, because it's dual ball bearing, you'll have your oil in and out on the opposite side. It's water cooled as well. On the Borg, you'll have a non-water cooled bearing housing, oil in, oil out. It's as simple as that. On the compressor stage, you'll actually notice that the compressor housings are very, very close in terms of physical dimensions. So the BorgWarner can still fit into a really small geography, and so can the Garrett. The Borg has got a fully machined intake tract, so all of the air contact areas on the inlet section of the compressor housing are fully machined. Same goes for the Garrett. Garrett used their main blade technology. BorgWarner still use their 7-blade splitter technology. Both are proven. Garrett are obviously a lot newer than what the BorgWarner is in terms of design. This is a journal bearing, this is a dual ball bearing, this is internally gated, this is free floating or externally gated. You have a requirement to install an external wastegate with a specific turbocharger. It's not really a fair comparison because of the fact that the bearing systems are completely different. However, let's look at the compressor maps and I will show you a little bit more information about how these turbochargers perform, where their efficiency islands are, and what you can expect to see on different engine sizes. Okay guys, so I've got the two compressor maps here with me, and what I'm going to do is digitally impose them onto your screens now so that you guys can see what I'm going to be referring to. First up is going to be the S200SXE. Okay, so the first thing I want to just mention to you guys once again, for those that don't know, is at 1.0 on your P to C ratio, your pressure ratio, it indicates 1 atmospheric pressure, as if you were at the coast. That's the outside pressure of air that you are currently breathing. Let's pretend we're at the coast, 1 bar atmospheric pressure. If we now go up to 3, that's 3 times atmospheric pressure, that would be 2 bar gauge pressure. That would be 0.4 bar gauge pressure. That would be 1.2 bar gauge pressure. Right, now we've got the understanding of what these references are, both on the BorgWarner as well as the Garrett P2C ratio. They use the same breakdown. So let's move on. The first thing I want to bring to your attention is, let's see at what boost pressure we intersect the beginning of the maximum efficiency island. On the BorgWarner S200SXE, it is a 75% efficiency, and it is intersected at approximately 0.7 bar boost. That's where you will intersect the beginning of the maximum efficiency island. On the Garrett side, it's a 79% efficiency, and you will only intersect that at approximately 0.9 of a bar. 0.9 bar boost will you intersect the beginning of that efficiency island. Let's have a look at the width. I'm just going over the very basic, obvious features of these compressor maps, and I'm going to basically compare them to each other. So the width of these two compressor maps, if you have a look at, firstly, the BorgWarner, you will see that in terms of flow, pounds per minute of airflow, here's a rule of thumb for you. This is quite a conservative rule of thumb, but for every 10 pounds per minute of airflow will equate to approximately 100 horsepower being generated, provided the engine can consume and put to good use the 10 pounds of air that the turbocharger is flowing into the engine. Right, so enough of that. Let's get into the width of this compressor map. If you have a look at where do we intersect the where can we expect to start seeing figures of 65 pounds of air, 650 horsepower from this specific turbocharger? Now, yes, it's a lot more complicated than just, okay, at this specific boost pressure and that applies to every engine. It actually is just an indication. Just different size engines, different compression ratios, different cooling factors, different fuels, different tuning, ignition advances, etc., will obviously yield different results. But at a specific guideline, boost pressure, where you should be able to see 650 horsepower being generated from this specific compressor map, would be around about 2 bar boost pressure. So from around about 1.8, 1.9 to 2 bar, you should start coming into the full power offering of this compressor map. Let's compare that to the Garrett. If you come up to this is the G25-660. Now, I have a bit of a concern about the compressor maps with the Garrett range of turbochargers. They claim 660 horsepower. However, the compressor maps are quite shy, sometimes 15% shy of 660 horsepower. So on this compressor map, that there would be more or less where you'd expect to see 660 horsepower being 66 pounds per minute of airflow. We don't even get to 60, or we're on the line of 60 pounds per minute of airflow. So you can expect to come to this area of 600 horsepower, which will be 50 shy of the BorgWarner, at approximately 1.5 bar gauge pressure. Now let's move up the scale on the Garrett compressor map. Let's get to about 1.75 of a bar gauge pressure, which would bring us to that point there. From that point, you'll actually see that this line starts to move towards the surge line. You actually start reducing in power. Now let's go up to 2 bar boost pressure, where the BorgWarner starts to make its maximum power on the Garrett compressor map, which is here. At that point, we've actually lost power. So from 1.5 bar to 2 bar, we've probably lost about 5% of the power capability or the power offering of the G25-660. Now, let's just discuss this for a second. The diameter of the inducer of the compressor for the Garrett G25-660 is 54 millimeters on the inducer side. On the BorgWarner, it's 57 mils. Okay? Let's have a look at the exducer, which is responsible for quite a lot of the mass flow of the compressor. The Garrett is 67 millimeters diameter, and the BorgWarner is 76. That is 9 millimeters larger. I can attribute this power loss or degradation in power as the boost pressure increases to the physical dimensions of the compressor. Now, I believe that Garrett wanted to get a really fast spooling turbocharger to cater for those engines that need a lot of punch response, but at the same time make a nice 600 horse, 580 horsepower offering. Why they labeled it 660 horsepower, I don't know. I'm yet to see a G25-660 make 660 horse. We've had them on various engines and they just don't get there. Let's just move up the scale. Let's go back to the BorgWarner. If we go to 2.4 bar gauge pressure, you're going to be looking at approximately that area there. You still smack bang on the 65 pounds per minute of airflow. Let's go up even further. This was going to be 2.8 bar, and that will be approximately there. And we're still smack bang 65 pounds per minute of airflow. Let's go to 3.2 bar gauge pressure. That takes us up to around about there. We've started to pull away from 3 bar, which is there, up to 3.2 bar, which is over here. We've started to move down to approximately 635 horsepower offering. So let's just understand this. We've got an operating P to C range between these points, starting at 2 bar boost, 1.9 bar, all the way up to 3.2 bar boost of usable power. Now, let's say, for example, you've got a small little engine like a Toyota 4AGE. Yes, it's small in terms of its cubic inch displacement, but it's no slouch. It will hold its own against the 2-liter multi-valve engines quite easily. That size engine would easily be able to make 650 horsepower from around about 2.2 bar boost, depending on cam profiles, etc. But let's say you move up in the cubic inch displacement of an engine to 2JZ, for example. This turbocharger will still make 650 horsepower and not run out of steam as a high revving engine like a 2J gets up to 7.5 or 7,800 RPM. It will still hold a nice torque curve. On the Garrett, however, you would see that as soon as you start going above 1.5, 1.6 bar boost, you'll start losing power. And that's a bit of a concern. However, it's not I don't believe it'll be a deal breaker. But when you start taking these two specific turbos into comparison in terms of cost, bang for your buck, BorgWarner takes the cake without a doubt, hands down, bar none. When it comes to the nice punch response, the Garrett product is really, really good. The only thing is it's got a very short and very small usable P to C range before the power starts to drop off considerably. So let's go up to about 2.2 bar boost, which is approximately there. Now at 2.2 bar boost, you've lost approximately 10%. You're down to about 570, 580 horsepower from a maximum of 600 down at 1.5 bar boost. So, you're looking at approximately 0.7 bar of usable power or usable P to C power, as opposed to a comparison with a BorgWarner running from 2 bar up to 3.2, which is 1.2 bar, 1.3 bar usable P to C at maximum horsepower. So let's talk about one last little aspect or one last little feature about when the turbochargers or when the compressors come into the maximum efficiency. As I mentioned earlier, BorgWarner starts to come to its maximum efficiency at about 0.6, 0.7 bar boost. The Garrett about 0.9 bar boost. So for a low boost application of, let's say, 0.4 or 0.5 bar boost, the Garrett turbocharger will not be as efficient as the BorgWarner. Forget about the number related to the turbochargers in terms of the efficiency percentages, but what I'd like you to know is when each compressor comes into its efficiency range. And obviously, if you're going to be using the BorgWarner for a lower boost application, it would actually be well suited in comparison to the Garrett, especially at boost pressures like 0.5 or 0.4 bar boost in the twin turbo application with a standard compression ratio in the engine. Obviously, pump fuel as well. Let's move on, guys. What I want to talk a little bit about now is a comparison between a level playing field where you have the G25-660 internally gated versus a 7163, which is also internally gated. The specific 7163 I have here is the T4 flanged twin scroll, obviously with its actuator included, diverter valve, boost control solenoid, speed sensor port, etc. And the Garrett has basically got exactly the same features, except it does not feature a boost control solenoid, which is really handy, as well as it does not feature a diverter valve. It does have a speed sensor port built in, and it does have a 1-bar actuator. So these are pretty much as close as damn it hand-to-hand or fair level playing field comparisons. Even though the 7163 is said to only produce 550 horse and the G25-660 produces slightly more, I'll actually go into the compressor maps and I'll reveal some really interesting information for you. First of all, what I'd like to show you guys is physical dimensions of these two turbochargers. The 7163 is slightly taller than the Garrett with this specific turbine housing. If you look at the V-band inlet or the T25 inlet flange, because of the fact that it's a single scroll and doesn't have two scrolls running next to each other or alongside, the turbochargers are slightly lower, so they're more or less the same height as the Garrett counterpart. So what I'd like to show you guys is have a look at the inlet design of the Garrett turbine housing, where the inlet gases will be directed to the swing valve. They basically separate in a different direction to the main airstream going into the main volute around the housing via the tongue to the turbine. Let's have a look at the BorgWarner. Now, first things first, the BorgWarner internally gated design has been around a lot longer than Garrett, approximately 2010, 2011, as opposed to Garrett, who have just recently released their G25 internally gated offering. Have a look at the diverter or direction, the diversion direction or the change in direction on the incoming gases going to your swing valve on the Borg. Remember, this is not an easy to see comparison because of the fact that it's twin scroll, but you can clearly see that the direction change at the inlet going directly to the diverter valve has been present on the BorgWarner a lot sooner than Garrett. I'm going to show you the 7670 quickly. It's easier to see in this specific housing. So the inlet gases on the 7670 coming in here with the change of direction leading directly to the swing valve. Okay. Question for you, do you think that Garrett have taken some of the ideas from BorgWarner? As you can see on the outside of this housing over here, there's your direction change. And there is your swing valve. I believe that Garrett did take some of the designs from the BorgWarner inlet and swing valve diversion or direction change, and then obviously rejoin the outlet on your exhaust system from the BorgWarner design. Now, I don't think there's any other way to do it really, because what they've done in both cases makes 100% sense, but I believe BorgWarner got there first. Let's lie these turbochargers down next to each other. Okay, so these two turbochargers in terms of the physical outside diameter or dimensions are more or less the same. So they'll take up more or less the same amount of geography under the hood. The inlet on the BorgWarner is 63 millimeters. On the Garrett, it's 76 millimeters. So 2.5 inch, 3 inch. Outlet are both 50 mils, 2 inch. on the back side of the compressor or the back plate, you are able to change the orientation of the compressor housing at 15-degree increments by loosening your actuator bracket, turning the compressor housing via loosening your V-band clamp with one little bolt, and obviously you can get whatever orientation change you need. On the Garrett side of things, you have a nice bracket which has got quite a bit of adjustment via those slots. So you can loosen these two bolts and you can pretty much turn the compressor housing inside of those slots. And if it's not enough, you can loosen all the other bolts and move the bracket to the next point. So you will more or less get the same adjustability in terms of orientation between turbine and compressor housing with both of these turbos. On the BorgWarner turbine housing, you will find that they have got a really, really nice casting. It is still a sand casting. It is not an investment cast housing. However, it is perfect in terms of its porosity and the quality of the material. They're burst containment tested housings, and they're obviously made from stainless. Garrett has got a nice looking surface finish in terms of the fact that it's actually an investment cast. A lost wax process is what they use to cast these housings. Really a little bit sketchy when you start looking at this area over here. Don't know what happened to the mold. I don't know if this was solidification. I don't have a second turbo on the table here to compare side by side to see if they have the same irregularities, but this is really ugly. You know, if I take a TurboDirect housing, which is also made from stainless and an investment cast, we've got a much better finish than that. Dare I split hairs here, guys? The pattern or insert in the pattern that you basically insert when you want to put a name onto a casting, you can actually see the outline over there. It doesn't look bad, but you know, a little bit of attention to detail. You know, Garrett's one of the biggest turbo manufacturers in the world. If I was in the QC department, I'd fail that, but that's just me. Am I splitting hairs? Am I being too critical? If I am, let me know in the comment section below. Don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings. A nice thing about BorgWarner, attention to detail. They've gone and machined these areas over here on the mounting faces, so you get full underhead contact between the fasteners and the flange face on the T4 flange. Nice thing about BorgWarner, I'm going into a bit of detail here, guys. It's not a V-band connection on your bearing housing to turbine housing fixture. It is a 12mm bolt, but the nice thing is these little flanges, as you loosen the bolt, you don't have to take the bolt out completely. All you've got to do is loosen it. This flange swings out all the way just by loosening the bolt, which allows you to just loosen, swing out the flanges and remove the supercore out of the turbine housing, and obviously the reversal when you reassemble again. BorgWarner have chosen a V-band clamp on the compressor side. Garrett have chosen bolts. BorgWarner have chosen bolts on the turbine side with quick release flanges. Garrett have chosen a V-band flange. So it's much of a muchness. Something about the Borg, your speed sensor port situated here is not completely drilled through. You have about a 0.5 mil to maybe 1 millimeter of material that still needs to be drilled through if you choose to use your speed sensor port. There's absolutely no way this port can leak. On the Garrett side of things, it is drilled, it is pre-drilled, it is drilled all the way through, and they have a little O-ring and a seal inside here, and they've obviously just put a little cover inside. So there's no requirement for you to go and drill. However, either or, it's 6 of the one, half a dozen of the other. No potential for leaks. There is a potential for leaks, but you know, that's up to you guys. No boost control solenoid on the Garrett, like you find on the Borg, and no diverter valve. Are they really worthwhile? Yes, and I'll substantiate that. On your screen now, you will see the gas path from the compressor housing to the diverter valve. It runs 100% straight. It does not have to go around corners. They've positioned the diverter in such a way that the gas path actually diverts directly from your compressor housing outlet back into the inlet of the compressor housing, or where your air intake tract goes, without having to change any direction. If someone has gone to that much attention to detail, try and imagine the rest of the detail that you'll find inside of the turbocharger in critical areas like the bearing system, etc. Both BorgWarner and Garrett have got different actuator spring pressures or spring rates that you can choose from. So whether or not you want to run a 1-bar boost setup or higher, you can obviously choose different spring rates, and you can control your boost either through electronic controls or spring pressure directly related to your vacuum line going onto your actuator, and you can run your setups like that. Okay guys, we've got the two compressor maps next to each other, 7163 and the G25-660. First thing I want to show you is what is the maximum horsepower, advertised horsepower of the 7163. It's 550 horsepower. Let's look at the compressor map. Do you notice that we actually intersect the 600, 595 horsepower, 600 horsepower or 60 pound per minute line, even though the turbochargers are only rated at 550 horsepower. This is the reason we see 550 wheel horsepower with the specific turbo on most of the applications we've seen them installed on. Let's go over the very obvious features first. Where do we come boost related into the beginning of the maximum efficiency island over here, which is 74% at about 0.8 bar boost. On the Garrett side of things, remember, it's 0.9 bar, so it's more or less the same. Let's have a look at the maximum horsepower capability of the 7163. 550 horse, that's what it's advertised at 55 pounds of air, pounds per minute of air. You come into your maximum horsepower range at around about 1.3 bar boost, and you find that you'll end that specific P2C ratio of usable power at approximately 2.8 bar boost. So that's 1.5 bar boost of usable power at 550 horsepower, the advertised horsepower. Let's go to the actual 600 horsepower, which is a direct comparison to your G25-660. That basically gives you a 0.7 bar boost of usable P2C ratio, as discussed in the previous comparison. So that'll be from approximately that point there to that point there. At around about 1.6 bar boost, 1.5, 1.6 bar boost, you will actually come up to a 60 pound per minute, 600 horsepower capable area, and you'll start to gradually leave that from approximately 2 bar boost, which is there. Okay, so you've got a bit of usable area in terms of your P2C ratio where you actually will touch to 600 horse, and then you'll start falling away slowly. You'll get to around about 580 horsepower at approximately 2.5 to 2.6 bar boost pressure, which is approximately there. These two turbochargers are actually really closely matched, even though the EFR is rated at 550 horse and the Garrett is rated at 660. All right guys, so the last comparison I want to do, I know the video is quite a long one and I've got into a lot more detail than I normally do, but I'll try and cut it as short as I can. The last comparison is the 7670, which is rated at 650 horsepower, and the G25-660. The first noticeable difference is the physical dimensions. The 7670 is a lot taller because of the design of the turbine housing. It runs a T3 inlet AR83 T3 family, as opposed to an AR72 GT25, GT28 family. It's a very compact housing on the Garrett. It's a lot larger on the EFR. The compressor housing is a lot taller as well because of the anti-surge design, as well as the incorporation of the DV, which obviously then has a direct air path, gas path that relieves directly into the ported shroud anti-surge section of the compressor housing. The rest of the features on both these turbochargers are exactly the same as the 7163. Speed sensor port, actuator, boost control solenoid, diverter valve, and obviously the Garrett that has got just your speed sensor port and your actuator. Both are internally gated, both have got dual ball bearing. The only difference is obviously the BorgWarner technology on the turbine is your gamma tie or titanium aluminide. This turbine wheel will weigh, even though it's almost twice the size in diameter to the G25, will weigh more or less the same, if not a touch less than the G25, believe it or not. Okay, so on the 7670, the obvious things, it comes into its maximum efficiency island of 75% at around about 0.9 bar boost, which is approximately there. You've got your 650 horse power delivery at around about 2 bar boost, which is there. and it is a nice wide map. It is a really tall map, so if you want to start making around about, let's take 600 horsepower all the way up, you'll start making 600 horse from around about 1.4 bar boost, which is approximately there, all the way up to 3.2 bar boost, which is approximately there, and you're still sitting on the 60 pound per minute of airflow. Anything above that will start falling away in this area over there. In terms of the Garrett side of things, we've gone over it numerous times. 0.9 bar boost, which is approximately there, is where you begin to come into the maximum efficiency island. You come into the maximum horsepower capability, which is not 660 horse, it's barely 600. Approximately here, which is at 1.5 bar boost, and you start falling away gradually above that, where you're about 10 to 15% away at around about 2.2 bar boost. Great comparison between these two turbochargers, although the EFR 7670 is physically larger. It will make a lot more power than the Garrett up top in the higher RPM range. Right guys, I hope that's been informative. I know I've gone into a lot more detail with this specific video. I hope it hasn't been too boring for you. I hope it has shed some light into how I look at a compressor map and some of the thought processes that we have in the background while looking at compressor maps, specifically when deciding what turbo to choose for what application. It was a nice comparison. The Garrett product's a great product. It is an OEM manufacturer, but in my opinion, the Borg takes the cards hands down. It really is the underdog. It is an underrated turbo, and it is something that once you've tried a Borg, you'll never go back to any other brand. Hope you enjoyed that. Comment down below. Give us your thoughts. If there's any other requests, David, I hope you enjoyed this. Let us know. Subscribe, like. Check you next time.